We just witnessed perhaps one of the clearest examples of media manipulation since the dreaded Kathy Newman interview with Jordan Peterson.
Jordan Peterson, right, you're just saying that's the way it is.
Well, I'm not saying anything. It's just an observation that that's the way it is. And that
So you're saying
rely on.
women have some sort of duty to sort of help fix the crisis of masculinity?
It depends on what they want.
So
if you want
women
domination.
want to dominate.
In this video, I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to analyze it from a sort of cultural perspective and try to see what sense we can make out of this. Let's go. Well, as many of you have probably heard, Elon Musk recently sat down with the British broadcasting company, the BBC, to do an interview about Twitter, and it was actually a pretty long interview. But there has been a part of that interview, about a 4-minute part of that interview, that has been spliced out and has gone viral on the internet, basically of Elon Musk manhandling this reporter who, in a few words, attempted to manipulate the conversation through use of emotionally triggering words, but when he was called to give any examples and evidence to fortify his attempt to manipulate, it fell short. Watch a little bit of this.
For you, I would see I get more of that kind of content, yeah, personally. But I'm not going to talk to the rest of for the rest of Twitter.
So you see more hate speech personally?
I would say I would see more hateful content in that.
Content you don't like or hateful? What do you mean to describe a hateful thing?
Yeah, I mean, just content that will solicit a reaction, something that may include something that is slightly racist or slightly sexist, those kinds of things.
So you think if something is slightly sexist, it should be banned?
No,
is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying anything. I'm
just curious. I'm trying to understand what you mean by hateful content. And I'm asking for specific examples. And you just said that if something is slightly sexist, that's hateful content. Does that mean that it should be banned?
Well, you've asked me whether my feed, whether it's got less or more. I'd say it's got slightly more.
That's why I'm asking for examples. Can you name one example?
I honestly don't use. Honestly, I
don't. You can't name a single example.
I'll tell you why. Because I don't actually use that for you feed anymore. Because I just don't particularly like it.
But you
and
said
actually, a lot of people are quite similar. I only look at
hang on a second.
my
You said you've seen more hateful content, but you can't name a single example, not even one.
I'm not sure I've used that feed for the last 3 or 4 weeks. And
then how did you see the hateful content?
Because I've been using Twitter since you've taken it over for the last 6 months.
Okay, so then you must have at some point seen for you hateful content. I'm asking for one example.
Right.
And you can't give a single one.
And I'm saying
then I say, sir, that you don't know what you're talking about.
Really?
Yes, because you can't give me a single example of hateful content, not even one tweet, and yet you claimed that the hateful content was high.
Well,
that's false.
No, what I claimed...
You just lied.
What I claimed was there are many organizations that say that kind of information is on the rise. Now, whether it has on my feed or not... I mean, right, and
literally can't name one.
Well, first of all, I must say that it's always good to see people who are always in the business of trying to cultivate a particular narrative get rebuked by sound reasoning. Nothing can overcome sound reasoning. There's a reason why the reporter, if you noticed, immediately began to pivot. He first made an authoritative statement about the nature of hate speech on Twitter, but then he began to pivot to say, well, actually, organizations say this, and, oh, I'm not involved in this. And you see, this is the problem. Media organizations and the corporate press are not incentivized to actually go out and find the truth. They are incentivized to stay within these sort of information centers in their own ecosystems, like certain nonprofit groups, like certain activists or advocacy groups that have gained a status in society and whose words are deemed credible by the corporate press, and they use that as a means of communicating certain ideas. Now, there's a problem with this, and we see this example all across the corporate press, all across the West. I'll give you guys a very clear example. The SPLC, the Southern Poverty Law Center. The SPLC is a well-known smear merchant organization which has attacked unduly many conservative and right-leaning voices, claiming they are racist and all kind of things, extremist. They call people who are against government overreach anti-government or patriot extremists, things like that. And yet, in the corporate press ecosystem, the Southern Poverty Law Center is seen as this sort of godly source of truth on issues of hate groups and extremism. Why is this so? So when you have this perverse relationship between groups that are not interested in the truth and a corporate press which is increasingly not interested in the truth, you will get more falsehood, and we're seeing that dynamic play out in this video. But what I want to talk about more broadly is the ideas the reporter was using to score one over on Elon Musk, and the ideas that have been used to describe Twitter more generally. One of these ideas are the ideas of hate speech. Now, I say this: we live in an era of anti-rational buzz phrases. What do I mean? We live in an era in which our political conversation in the West is almost entirely controlled by certain words that provoke an emotional reaction within your soul, but actually do not move you towards rational thought. So, for example, the word hate conjures up something so visceral and disgusting that most of us don't like that word. Or when we think of that word, we are immediately turned away from it. Oh no, hate, we don't like that. Which is why you see so many different emotional phrases. Hate has no place here, for example, take hold, because they're very powerful, evocative, emotional phrases. But the moment you pair an emotional phrase with an intelligible concept like speech, you will override the due consideration those concepts deserve, and you will still be entirely dealing with the emotion. And when this gets into the realm of public policy, this gets even more dangerous, because now you have policies being made on the basis of passion and not policies being made on the basis of rationality and truth. And that's what we see with hate speech laws. That's what we see with hate crime laws, with speech codes that have been around universities in the West since the 90s and in some cases since the 80s, attempts to restrict the ability to speak in the name of this sort of emotional phrase. So what does hate speech actually mean, my friends? Many commenters have actually been very astute in observing that hate speech is a very subjective phenomenon, but it is not only subjective, it is an incoherent idea. What do I mean by that? Well, let's actually examine from a philosophical viewpoint the idea of speech. Speech is merely the description of a physical quality that every human being uniquely possesses due to his rational nature, due to his ability to reason. Other animals cannot speak in the way that human beings do. They communicate through sounds and other sonorous means, but they don't have the words, the sentence structure, the grammar, the verbiage that human beings have. And so speech is simply a reflection of man's higher nature that comes out from his being. Now, it is man's only way, speech is man's only way to reckon with the world around him, and to, after reckoning with the world around him and understanding it, forming civilizations and societies that help him and others survive in the world, which help him and others, as the great philosopher Isabel Patterson said, apply his creative element of his being towards the natural world and master it. And with that mastery of the natural world, what do we get? We get civilization. We get airplanes. We get horse and buggies. We get heating. We get all these different advents of modern technology that even came before our current era. We get the cell phone, we get the telephone, we get on the moon because man has used his speech, guided by his ability to reason, to transform the world around him. Now, there's a problem though. The moment this ability is treated in any way other than is necessary, is the moment you begin to restrict man's ability to survive. The moment you apply a value judgment to man's speech, and that value judgment leads to legislation or leads to policies that restrict it, you are restricting his ability to reckon with the world, to master the world, and to achieve his own human potential. The only value that should be appended to speech is free speech, because free speech is the natural condition of man's ability to speak, and it is the necessary condition for civilization to flourish and for man himself to flourish. This is the philosophical objection to the idea of hate speech, is that it tries to butcher the necessary requirements of human nature and civilization within that context, and doesn't actually justify itself beyond sheer emotion, and then opens a gateway to what? Hate speech laws. Once again, this should concern every single one of us. Now, let's get back to, there's many more arguments against hate speech laws, right? Like for intent. No man can truly know the heart of another man. The heart is in the penumbras of our being. It is so inaccessible to any one of us that to try to discern someone's intent is to try to do something that has been impossible for centuries and is still very hard today. So you're taking an already very hard task trying to discern someone's intent, and then you're trying to impose that into law. Law should not be based on conceptual uncertainty. Law should be based on simple and certain truths that we can observe in a particular context, not on subjective ideas that require us to do things that are virtually impossible, which is another reason why hate speech laws are, and the idea of hate speech is bad, because it cannot account for the mysteriousness of our intention. Now, I'm flowing right now, guys. Let's tie this back towards media manipulation. How does all this have to do with media manipulation? The media exists to inform you. It exists to inform you on what is happening in society and what is happening in a particular locale in society. But what happens when the tool meant to inform you actually attacks your own understanding by undercutting it and trying to place false narratives in its place? By also attacking the vehicle of all understanding, speech. If man cannot speak, he cannot understand the world around him, he can't understand current events. So when the very tool meant to inform you attacks the vehicle for understanding, speech, how do you handle that? You handle it by saying the truth. They're no longer trying to inform you per se, they're trying to mislead you. And in that misleading, take you to the alternate reality of their choice. We call this, in philosophy, or this can be likened in philosophy to the allegory of the cave, where they want you to see shadows in the walls and forget the light that you have the ability to access by thinking. The media is trying to put this big projection, the corporate press particularly, is trying to put this big projection around you so they can guide you to where they want you to be, not where you should be. This is one of the reasons why alternative media, like me, like people like Tim Pool, are so popular, because people are waking up to this fact and they understand this. Even if they don't have the language to describe it, even if they're not talking about it on this level, they have this sense of urgency within their humanity which moves them towards action against this force. And thank God for that conscience that we all have in our humanity. So, the moment you see them trying to put a murky and ill-defined concept, like hate speech, at the forefront of a conversation, when that murky and ill-defined concept actually undermines our ability to understand ideas, to understand the natural world, then we've established they're trying to mislead you. We've established that they're trying to distort things. Twitter is the biggest counterweight to active media manipulation and distortion of concepts through anti-human words. Twitter, if you look at this, is the biggest source, really the only prominent source, of alternative journalism. Twitter has broken so many stories and challenged so many stories that the corporate press has either not wanted to have challenged or the corporate press, reported on. Twitter has literally been a counterweight and a correction on the White House when they say certain things that are lies, whereas 20 years ago, if the White House said something, a lot of corporate press would actually report it as if it was true. Twitter has really broken apart the duopoly that the media have on your mind and your ability to think as a free human being. That is the motivation that the corporate press has to take down Elon Musk's project. I'm not saying Elon Musk is perfect. I'm not saying Elon Musk is a god or he's a benevolent or whatever. But what I am saying is that since Twitter is undercutting corporate media has an incentive to undercut Twitter. That is largely part of the reason you saw that very aggressive line of questioning given by that reporter. Again, the word hate is so visceral, it's so primal, that it takes us away from our ability to think. My friends, don't let anybody take you away from your ability to think. Once they can control you by invoking emotion instead of reason, once they can do that, is the moment you have already lost the battle. You can be as strong as you want, you can be as brash as you want, as belligerent as you want. If you don't have the mind of a free-thinking person, you will not win. Athena, if you want to use mythology, Athena, the goddess of strategy and warfare, always beats Ares, who's just the god of war. Ares is run entirely by passion. He uses his spear and his shield to attack like a warhammer. Athena sits back and thinks. She strategizes. While Ares is attacking, she has 10 of her machines on this side, on that side, and by the time he's done attacking, he's surrounded and he's done. Be Athena. Don't be Ares. For all of you mythology nerds out there. It's important to understand the definitions of concepts and to appreciate them for what they are. And it's important to have the language, have the toolkit to fight against certain words and to reject the premises of certain words when they show up. The premise of hate speech is false, as I mentioned, and should not be allowed in any society that actually values knowledge and understanding. It should be laughed out as much as a tyrant who wants to restrict your ability to speak, or a tyrant who wants to restrict your ability to drink a certain kind of soda or whatever, like Mike Bloomberg did in New York so many years ago. As they would be left out of the society, so should people who invoke hate speech as a serious concept. It is not, but the corporate press knows that. But it is advantageous to them because so many people still get riled up over it. Don't fall into that trap. Embrace reason in light of truth, and let this interview with Elon Musk and BBC be a clear example of what happens when you use reason on these manipulators. My friends, love you guys so much. Patreon is down in my description, my comment section. Be sure to comment on this video, like this video, subscribe to this channel, share this video. My mission is to get more people to have the toolkits to fight in this war we have in our culture, to fight against the managerial state, the administrative state, and to really get America and the West back to the principles that allowed us to have coherent civilizations. Join me in that quest. I love you guys so much, and please stay pensive. Bye.